that it's starting.
Yeah, like the pre-show.
Yeah. Okay, this is just so people will get, in case someone sees this later, I will edit it. But this is just to give people some time to like get the notification, the live notification, and show up.
Yeah.
Now, Esty isn't here, but she did text me and say, remember you were going to start the stream early? Well, you're not there. Why are you texting me but not being in my chat? Oh. This is my reminder. Okay. Clock in the kitchen is off by 2 minutes. Okay. Do I need anything else? Cat's been fed. Hello, one person who is here. I'm going to go ahead and go live on the Instagram. All right. Instagram is live. YouTube is live. GarageBand is recording the audio. All right. Hello and welcome to Isolated Literary Society presents Daily Austen with me, Sarah Shay. Oh, hi, Erin. Esty just texted me. And then I saw one person was in here. I was like, oh, it's probably Esty because she just texted me. I'm live now. So where are you? Winky face. Winky face race bear. Okay. All right. Today we'll be reading another chapter or two of Jane Austen's Emma. Let's see, where were we? Yeah, so we have the party at the Coles has happened, where Mrs. Weston has expressed her personal belief that Mr. Knightley is in love with Jane Fairfax. Emma continues to be quite convinced that Mr. Frank Churchill is in love with her. Not really in the mail. Anyway, somebody gave Jane Fairfax a whole entire pianoforte, you guys. And a nice one.
And we have agreed that this someone loves her. It is a show of affection.
Oh, yes. There are lots of opinions, but everyone agrees it must be a show of affection. Now, the people who don't scheme in this village are perfectly content imagining that it was a gift from Colonel Campbell, her sort of guardian-ish person. However,
married to her friend.
However, no, Colonel Campbell's her friend's father.
The Dixons.
Yes. However,
Mrs. Dixon is her friend.
Yeah, the reasonable people believe it to be just a nice sort of paternal type familial gift from Colonel Campbell. Now, Mrs. Weston thinks it came from Mr. Knightley because she thinks that he is in love.
Yes.
With Jane Fairfax.
Yep.
And Emma thinks it came from Mr. Dixon, the husband of the former Miss Campbell, who Jane was sort of raised with.
Mm. And furthermore, she believes that Jane does not regret this connection.
Oh, yeah.
Whoever it is who gave it to her.
Yeah. Because she thinks Jane has been sort of...
because Jane clearly, when they said that...
pleased with it. She's not... She doesn't seem distressed by having received this piano. And since obviously Emma is correct and it came from Mr. Dixon, that means Jane is a what's the word I'm looking for?
Hussy?
Oh, Carolyn. I was going to say an inveterate floozy or something. I don't know. Hussy's good though.
Reprobate.
Anyway.
Unrepentant reprobate.
That's the word I was looking for. I was like, what's the word? Unrepentant.
Oh, yes.
An unrepentant flirt.
Yes. I like floozy.
Yeah, floozy's good.
That's good.
Hussy's also good. These are good words, guys.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we do not know who actually gave the piano forte to Jane Fairfax. However, we have established, in fact, that it is an excellent instrument of good quality. It's not just a flimsy gift.
Very specific backstory.
Yes. All right. And also that Mr. Knightley does not want to hang out with Frank Churchill.
That's
We've
true.
also established that. All right. So,
he really doesn't like him.
With that recap, let us begin chapter 29.
even more than he doesn't like Mr. Elton.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Considerably more, I would say. Chapter 29. It may be possible to do without dancing entirely. Instances have been known of young people passing many, many months successively, without being at any ball of any description, and no material injury accrue either to body or mind. But when a beginning is made, when the felicities of rapid motion have once been, though slightly felt, it must be a very heavy set that does not ask for more. Wow, dancing, very serious.
Heavy set?
I'm not totally sure what she means by that.
Well, set would be like a group of people, but why would they be heavy?
Yeah, I'm not sure what she means by heavy. It's like, just it, like,
overly
what is
academic? Very, very Mary Bennett.
Yeah, maybe. What a boring group of people that would not ask for more dancing once they have had some.
Yes.
Frank Churchill had danced once at Highbury and longed to dance again. And the last half hour of an evening which Mr. Woodhouse was persuaded to spend with his daughter at Randall's was passed by the two young people in schemes on the subject. Aaron commented he has no idea what half of these words mean. Yep.
Schemes, Aaron. Schemes.
Schemes. You know schemes, Aaron. You know schemes. All right. Nation and appearance. But still she had inclination enough for showing people again how delightfully Mr. Frank Churchill and Miss Woodhouse danced, for doing that in which she need not blush to compare herself to Jane Fairfax. So Emma, the one thing that Emma is like reasonable about is she acknowledges that Jane Fairfax is better at singing and playing piano than her.
Yeah.
But apparently not better at dancing. She feels very comfortable in her abilities there. And even for simple dancing itself, without any of the wicked aids of vanity, to assist him first in pacing out the room they were in to see what it could be made to hold, and then in taking the dimensions of the other parlor, in the hope of discovering, in spite of all that Mr. Weston could say of their exactly equal size, that it was a little the largest. A little the largest.
Just a little.
Just a little. His first proposition and request that the dance begun at Mr. Cole's should be finished there, that the same party should be collected and the same musician engaged, met with the readiest acquiescence. I believe they're talking about the like assembly rooms that are like not really in use anymore for some reason. They don't have enough people.
Because
I don't know if assembly room is the right term for the rooms they're talking about, but it's like
right,
attached to an inn.
Yeah, the ones that they looked in at.
Yeah, and like they say that.
There's even an illustration of Frank sticking his head inside.
Yeah, he like looks in and everything. But the weird thing is they say like, oh yes, they used to have balls there, but they don't anymore because there just aren't really enough people who live here.
Yeah.
Aren't there? I don't know.
I mean, I guess
seems like a weird reason to not.
It's probably like a matter of convention or something.
Yeah. Anyway,
you have to have
Frank
this
Churchill,
many families to have a ball.
Mr. Frank Churchill will hear none of it. Esty, you have joined us. I'm so sorry that the notification was not helpful in getting you here on time.
Well, and remember, part of Emma's objections that there weren't enough families was that there were not enough families of the right sort. But then
true.
But then she thought about it and was like, it would be okay because the next day we would all just go back to our places. Normally, it wouldn't have to upset the social order to be dancing together.
Yeah. That's probably what it is. She's just like she's kind of maybe getting a little bit of wiggle room in her strict beliefs about the social order now that she went to a lovely party at the Coles.
Yes, that too.
All right. Where was I? Mr. Weston entered into the idea with thorough enjoyment, and Mrs. Weston most willingly undertook to play as long as they could wish to dance, and the interesting employment had followed of reckoning up exactly who there would be, and proportioning out the indispensable division of space to every couple. You and Miss Smith and Miss Fairfax will be... Who's talking right now? How could I be expected to know which voice to use, but don't know who's talking? Mr. Weston, I think. Okay. You and Miss Smith and Miss Fairfax will be 3, and the 2 Miss Coxes 5 had been repeated many times over. And there will be the 2 Gilberts, young Cox, damn it must be Frank Churchill talking, my father and myself, besides Mr. Knightley. Yes, that will be quite enough for pleasure. You and Miss Smith and Miss Fairfax will be 3, and the 2 Miss Coxes 5, and for 5 couple there will be plenty of room. Sorry, ST said something. I was trying refreshing to look for a video starting at 5:57.
What?
Huh, and no video showed up. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. It's for some reason it's been difficult. The videos are not showing up right at the top or something. I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to posting the specific link on Twitter again. I stopped doing that because nobody ever seemed to react to it. But I will try doing that again, Esty, so you can check my Twitter for the link. But soon it came to be on one side. But will there be good room for 5 couple? I really do not think there will. On another. And after all, 5 couple are not enough to make it worthwhile to stand up. 5 couple are nothing when one thinks seriously about it. They will not do to invite 5 couple. It can be allowable only as the thought of the moment. Somebody said that Miss Gilbert was expected at her brother's and must be invited with the rest. Somebody else believed Mrs. Gilbert would have danced the other evening if she had been asked. A word was put in for a second young Cox, and at last, Mr. Weston naming one family of cousins who must be included, and another a very old acquaintance who could not be left out, it became a certainty that the 5 couple would be at least 10, and a very interesting speculation in what possible manner they could be disposed of. The doors of the 2 rooms were just opposite each other. Might not they use both rooms and dance across the passage? It seemed the best scheme, and yet it was not so good but that many of them wanted a better. Emma said it would be awkward. Mrs. Weston was in distress about the supper, and Mr. Woodhouse opposed it earnestly on the score of health. It made him so very unhappy indeed that it could not be persevered in. "Oh, no," said he, "it would be the extreme of imprudence. I could not bear it for Emma. Emma is not strong. She would catch a dreadful cold. So would poor little Harriet. So would you all. Mrs. Weston, you would be quite laid up. Do not let them talk of such a wild thing. Pray do not let them talk of it. That young man," speaking lower, "is very thoughtless. Do not tell his father, but that young man is not quite the thing. He has been opening the doors very often this evening, and keeping them open very inconsiderately. He does not think of the draught. I do not mean to set you against him, but indeed he is not quite the thing." I believe he's talking about Mr. Frank Churchill.
Yes.
Mrs. Weston was sorry for such a change. She knew the importance of it, and said everything in her power to do it away. Every door was now closed, and the passage plan given up, and the first scheme of dancing only in the room they were in resorted to again, and with such goodwill on Frank Churchill's part, that the space which a quarter of an hour before had been deemed barely sufficient for 5 couple was now endeavored to be made out quite enough for 10. "We were too magnificent," said he. "We allowed unnecessary room. 10 couple may stand here very well." Emma demurred. "It would be a sad crowd, and what could be worse than dancing without space to turn in?" "Very true," he gravely replied. "It was very bad." But still he went on measuring, and still he ended with, "I think there would be very tolerable room for 10 couple." "No, no," said she, "you are quite unreasonable. It would be dreadful to be standing so close. Nothing can be further from pleasure than to be dancing in a crowd, and a crowd in a little room." "There is no denying it," he replied. "I agree with you exactly. A crowd in a little room. Miss Woodhouse, you have the art of giving pictures in a few words. Exquisite, quite exquisite. Still, however, having proceeded so far, one is unwilling to give the matter up. It would be a disappointment to my father, and altogether, I do not know that I am rather of opinion that 10 couple might stand here very well." "Oh, well, I completely agree with you completely, and yet at the same time, I do not." This is going to be another one of those chapters where nothing happens and people just contradicted themselves over and over.
Pretty much, yeah.
Emma perceived that the nature of his gallantry was a little self-willed, and that he would rather oppose than lose the pleasure of dancing with her, and she took the compliment and forgave the rest. Had she intended ever to marry him, it might have been worthwhile to pause and consider, and try to understand the value of his preference, and the character of his temper. But for all the purposes of their acquaintance, he was quite amiable enough.
Yes, it's because he wants so very badly to dance with her.
Mm-hmm. Obviously.
And
even though she doesn't intend to marry him, it's still, it's still nice.
He's fun to play with.
It's nice to be liked. She totally doesn't actually want to marry him.
Totally. She's already planning how to brush him off.
Yeah. Before the middle of the next day, he was at Hartfield, and he entered the room with such an agreeable smile as certified the continuance of the scheme. It soon appeared that he came to announce an improvement. Well, Miss Woodhouse, he almost immediately began, your inclination for dancing has not been quite frightened away, I hope, by the terrors of my father's little rooms. I bring a new proposal on the subject, a thought of my father's, which waits only your approbation to be acted upon. May I hope for the honor of your hand for the first 2 dances of this little projected ball to be given, not at Randall's, but at the Crown Inn? So apparently they were at Randall's and not at the Crown Inn, which is what we thought.
Oh, yeah, but I thought that they were talking about, I thought that they were proposing to have the ball at the Crown Inn.
Well, but they were talking about measuring the room, so I thought they were at the Crown Inn. You know what, though?
That's true.
It's because we took a break between chapters, and the last chapter ends with them and they set off for Randall's from from the Bateses. From visiting Bateses. They go off to Randall's. So that it just I hate it. They change a chapter and then this is what we were just doing.
Yes.
Without restating that they're at Randall's. Anywho.
The chapter breaks are sort of
arbitrary.
Yeah.
And randomly placed too. It's not like they're arbitrary because they had to be about all the same length. Yeah. They're definitely not.
Yeah.
All right. The Crown. Yes, if you and Mr. Woodhouse see no objection, and I trust you cannot, my father hopes his friends will be so kind as to visit him there. Better accommodations he can promise them, and not a less grateful welcome than at Randall's. It is his own idea. Mrs. Weston sees no objection to it, provided you are satisfied. That is what we all feel. Oh, you are perfectly right. 10 couple in either of the Randall's rooms would have been insufferable, dreadful. I felt how right you were the whole time, but was too anxious for securing anything to like to yield. Is it not a good exchange? You consent. I hope you consent. It appears to me a plan that nobody can object to, if Mr. and Mrs. Weston do not. I think it admirable, and as far as I can answer for myself, shall be most happy. It seems the only improvement that could be. Papa, do you not think it an excellent improvement? She was obliged to repeat and explain it before it was fully comprehended, and then, being quite new, further representations were necessary to make it acceptable. No, he thought it very far from an improvement. A very bad plan, much worse than the other. A room at an inn was always damp and dangerous, never properly aired, or fit to be inhabited. If they must dance, they had better dance at Randall's. He had never been in the room at the Crown in his life, did not know the people who kept it by sight. No, a very bad plan. They would catch worse colds at the Crown than anywhere. I've never been in the room, and I don't know the people who own it. Therefore, it must be dreadful.
You don't know the people who own it. That's...
He can't judge it, and therefore it must be bad.
Yes, exactly.
And if he did know them and had been there, he would find some reason to think it bad as well.
What a great excuse for not going home with a guy or something, or if you don't want to go to someone's place after a party or something, be like, I don't know the people who own the building though.
Yeah, it probably has a draft. I would catch a worse cold there than anywhere.
Sorry, I'd love to, but I can't.
Yeah, I can't. Mr. Woodhouse would not approve.
Been introduced.
I have to go home and have a thin basin of gruel.
Catch you later.
I was going to observe, sir, said Frank Churchill, that one of the great recommendations of this change would be the very little danger of anybody's catching cold. So much less danger at the Crown than at Randall's. Mr. Perry might have reason to regret the alteration, but nobody else could. Sir, said Mr. Wormhouse quite rather warmly, you are very much mistaken if you suppose Mr. Perry to be that sort of character. Mr. Perry is extremely concerned when any of us are ill, but I do not understand how the room at the Crown can be safer for you than your father's house. From the very circumstance of it being larger, sir. We shall have no occasion to open the windows at all, not once the whole evening, and it is that dreadful habit of opening the windows, letting in cold air upon heated bodies, which, as you well know, sir, does the mischief. As we all know, that is how you catch a cold.
Yes.
Open the windows? Well, surely, Mr. Churchill, nobody would think of opening the windows at Randall's. Nobody could be so imprudent. I never heard of such a thing. Dancing with open windows. I am sure neither your father nor Mrs. Weston, the poor Miss Taylor that was, would suffer it.
I think that's the first time he's called her Mrs. Weston.
Right, yeah. And then he still had to correct himself. Oh, the poor Miss Taylor that was.
Yes.
But at least it's a step in the right direction. He did call her Mrs. Weston.
Yeah. Acknowledge that is now her name.
Ah, sir, but a thoughtless young person will sometimes step behind a window curtain and throw up a sash without its being suspected. I have often known it done myself. Have you indeed, sir? Bless me, I never could have supposed it. But I live out of the world and am often astonished at what I hear. However, this does make a difference, and perhaps when we come to talk it over, but these sort of things require a good deal of consideration. One cannot resolve upon them in a hurry. If Mr. and Mrs. Weston will be so obliging as to call here one morning, we may talk it over and see what may be done. Oh, but unfortunately, sir, my time is so limited. Oh, interrupted Emma, there will be plenty of time for talking everything over. There is no hurry at all. If it can be contrived to be at the Crown, Papa, it will be very convenient for the horses. They will be so very near their own stable. Oh, so they will, my dear. That is a great thing. Not that James ever complains, but it is right to spare our horses when we can. If I could be sure of the rooms being thoroughly aired, but is Mrs. Stokes to be trusted? I doubt it. I do not know her, even by sight, and therefore she cannot possibly be trusted.
Indeed.
I can answer for everything in that nature, sir, because it will be under Mrs. Weston's care. Mrs. Weston undertakes to direct the whole. There, Papa. Now you must be satisfied. Our own dear Mrs. Weston, who is carefulness itself. Do you not remember what Mr. Perry said so many years ago when I had the measles? If Miss Taylor undertakes to wrap Miss Emma up, you need not have any fears, sir. How often have I heard you speak of it as such a compliment to her? Ah, very true. Mr. Perry did say so. I shall never forget it. Oh, poor little Emma. You were very bad with the measles. That is, you would have been very bad but for Perry's great attention. He came 4 times a day for a week. He said from the first it was a very good sort, which is our great comfort, but the measles are a dreadful complaint. I hope whenever poor Isabella's little ones have the measles, she will send for Perry. From London.
Yes, exactly.
My father and Mrs. Weston are at the Crown at this moment, said Frank Churchill, examining the capabilities of the house. I left them there and came on to Hartfield, impatient for your opinion, and hopeful you might be persuaded to join them and give your advice on the spot. I was desired to say so from both. It would be the greatest pleasure to them if you could allow me to attend you there. They can do nothing satisfactorily without you. Emma was most happy to be called to such a council, and her father engaging to think it all over while she was gone, the 2 young people set off together without delay for the Crown. There were Mr. and Mrs. Weston, delighted to see her and receive her approbation. Boy, they use the word approbation in this book a lot.
Yeah.
It's like every chapter has at least 3 examples of people giving their approbation. Or disapprobation.
Yes. I don't know, it must have been, did Pride and Prejudice have as much?
I don't think so. I don't feel like I noticed it, but then maybe I'm putting them both together in my brain because time is weird right now.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Time has no meaning.
Yes. There were Mr. and Mrs. Weston, delighted to see her and receive her approbation, very busy and very happy in their different way, she in some little distress, and he finding everything perfect.
Of course.
Emma, said she, this paper is worse than I expected. Look, in places you see it is dreadfully dirty, and the wainscot is more yellow and forlorn than anything one could have imagined. My dear, you are too particular, said her husband. What does all that signify? You will see nothing of it by candlelight. It will be as clean as Randall's by candlelight. We never see anything of it on our club nights. The ladies here probably exchanged looks which meant, men never know when things are dirty or not. And the gentlemen perhaps each thought to himself, women will have their little nonsenses and needless cares. One perplexity, however, arose, which the gentlemen did not disdain. It regarded the supper room. At the time of the ballroom's being built, suppers had not been in question, and a small card room adjoining was the only addition. What was to be done? This card room would be wanted as a card room now, or if cards were conveniently voted unnecessary by their 4 selves, still was not it too small for any comfortable supper? Another room of much better size might be secured for the purpose, but it was at the other end of the house, and a long awkward passage must be gone through to get at it. This made a difficulty. Mrs. Weston was afraid of draughts for the young people in that passage, and neither Emma nor the gentlemen could tolerate the prospect of being miserably crowded at supper. Mrs. Weston proposed having no regular supper, merely sandwiches, etc., set out in the little room, but that was scouted as a wretched suggestion. A private dance without sitting down to supper was pronounced an infamous fraud upon the rights of men and women, and Mrs. Weston must not speak of it again. Oh, wow.
That's exactly what Mary Wollstonecraft
would be a fraud, an infamous fraud at that. That's in An Ideal Husband.
Oh.
When he's speaking to the common, like the
about the scheme.
Yeah, the scheme. It would be a fraud, an infamous fraud at that.
Yes.
That's such a good scene. Anyway. Yeah. Infamous fraud.
I like how they call things schemes.
I feel
ideas or plans.
Yeah,
it's a scheme.
Schemes.
It makes
really should bring back the word scheme in that use.
Yes.
Yeah, this makes me think that an infamous fraud was kind of a more of a figure of speech at one point, which makes me very happy.
Yeah.
Like a downright shame or something like that. It's kind of words that you would use together frequently.
Yes. Yes.
An infamous fraud. I love that. A private dance without sitting down to supper. An infamous fraud upon the rights of men and women. That's delightful.
It is.
She then took another line of expediency, and looking into the doubtful room, observed, I do not think it is so very small. We shall not be many, you know. And Mr. Weston, at the same time, walking briskly with long steps through the passage, was calling out, You talk a great deal of the length of this passage, my dear. It is a mere nothing, after all, and not the least draught from the stairs. I wish, said Mrs. Weston, one could know which arrangement our guests in general would like best. To do what would be most generally pleasing must be our object, if one could but tell what that would be. Yes, very true, cried Frank, very true. You want your neighbours' opinions. I do not wonder at you. If one could ascertain what the chief of them, the Coles, for instance, they are not very far off. Shall I call upon them? Or Miss Bates, she is still nearer. And I do not know whether Miss Bates is not likely to understand the inclinations of the rest of the people as anybody. I think we do not want a larger council. Should I go and invite Miss Bates to join us? Well, if you please, said Mrs. Weston, rather hesitating, if you think she will be of any use. You will get nothing to the purpose from Miss Bates, said Emma. She will be all delight and gratitude, but she will tell you nothing. She will not even listen to your questions. I see no advantage in consulting Miss Bates. But she is so amusing, so extremely amusing. I am very fond of hearing Miss Bates talk, and I need not bring the whole family, you know. Here Mr. Weston joined them, and on hearing what was proposed, gave it his decided approbation. Oh, God, no. Are they really about to go get Miss Bates? Here we go.
Take a deep breath.
I do, Frank. Go and fetch Miss Bates, and let us end the matter at once. She will enjoy the scheme, I am sure, and I do not know a properer person for showing us how to do away difficulties. Fetch Miss Bates. We are growing a little too nice. She is a standing lesson on how to be happy. But fetch them both. Invite them both. Both, sir. Can the old lady? The old lady? No, the young lady, to be sure. I shall think you a great blockhead, Frank, if you bring the aunt without the niece. Oh, I beg your pardon, sir. I did not immediately recollect. Undoubtedly, if you wish it, I will endeavor to persuade them both. And away he ran. Oh, right, there's a niece. Ha ha, I forgot. Forgot she existed.
Well, if you want.
Yeah. Long before he reappeared, attending the short, neat, brisk-moving aunt and her elegant niece, Mrs. Weston, like a sweet-tempered woman and a good wife, had examined the passage again, and found the evils of it much less than she had supposed before. Indeed, very trifling, and here ended the difficulties of decision. All the rest, in speculation at least, was perfectly smooth. All the minor arrangements of table and chair, lights and music, tea and supper, made themselves, or were left as mere trifles, to be settled at any time between Mrs. Weston and Mrs. Stokes. Everybody invited was certainly to come. Frank had already written to Enscombe to propose staying a few days beyond his fortnight, which could not possibly be refused. And a delightful dance it was to be. Most cordially, when Miss Bates arrived, did she agree that it must. As a counsellor, she was not wanted, but as an approver, a much safer character, she was truly welcome. Her approbation, at once general and minute, warm and incessant, could not but please, and for another half hour they were all walking to and fro between the different rooms, some suggesting, some attending, and all in happy enjoyment of the future. The party did not break up without Emma's being positively secured for the first two dances by the hero of the evening, nor without overhearing Mr. Westman whisper to his wife, "He has asked her, my dear. That's right. I knew he would." And there we have the illustration of Mr. Weston, so pleased, whispering, probably a stage whisper, to his wife.
Yes.
To confirm that Frank did indeed ask. Frank did ask Emma for the first 2 dances. I didn't know that was a common thing when I first saw Pride and Prejudice.
I didn't either.
I didn't know that it was just like not weird at all to ask someone before the event for the dance and to ask for 2 dances at a time.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a sign when Mr. Collins asks Lizzie for the first 2 dances, and they all laugh.
Yeah.
I thought they were laughing because they're like, dummy, you don't have to ask her to dance a week ahead of time or whatever. Like you can just wait till we get there. And also asking for 2 dances, how weird.
Yeah.
But no, they were just laughing because Lizzie will have to dance the first 2 dances, and also because it's an obvious sign of favor.
Yes.
But I totally thought they were just being similarly. The thing about the shelves in the closet.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I didn't know shelves in the closet were normal at the time because I think of closets being where you hang clothes, but they didn't use hangers back then.
Right.
They folded clothes and put them on shelves. So when she goes, "Shelves in a closet, happy thought indeed," I thought she was being like, who would do this? Instead, she's going, yeah, freaking duh. I love that it worked either way. I understood that Lady Catherine was being ridiculous.
Right.
I just slightly misunderstood the way in which she was being ridiculous.
Right. Yeah.
She was giving unnecessary and unuseful advice.
Yeah.
I just misunderstood in what way it was unuseful. So,
I wonder if the type of dancing, I wonder if it was common to dance more than one dance with a partner at a time.
It seems like it is.
In some types of dancing, that still is. Like if you dance tango or milonga, it's customary to dance like 2 or 3 at a time. I don't know why exactly.
Interesting.
Maybe they're short.
I've never done tango.
Well, I've never done it well, but
that's fair.
I have been in the room.
I'll put it this way. I have been to a fusion dance where I was led by a tango dancer. That's the closest I've come to actually tangoing.
There you go.
There's going to be a bit of a tango flavor in there, but I've never taken lessons or anything.
Yeah. But it's customary to engage someone for like 3 dances at a time.
It seems like at least all the Jane Austen stuff that I've read or seen seems to support the idea of dancing more than one dance with somebody.
Yeah.
But as we have learned, Jane is not necessarily to be expected to represent the average.
Yeah, that's very true.
All right. Chapter XXX. Sexy chapter. Or they'll all drink moonshine. One of the 2.
Yeah, or the restaurant in Issaquah, which.
Oh man, do you think the place is still around? It's like a old drive-in.
Yeah, it's just hilarious because it's called the XXX.
Yeah,
But
it's root beer.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's what it is. I think the idea is it's like XXX is written on like booze, but then maybe it was like it's supposed to be a prohibition reference or something. I don't know, but they make their own root beer.
I thought it was just like the size of their portions or something, like Mondo or something.
Oh, I think it specifically refers to the root beer. I could be wrong. Esty has pointed out in the chat, if someone in tango says thank you after one dance, you know you screwed up.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, my only partner dancing experience is blues, swing, and contra. And I don't think more than one dance is like doing more than one dance with one person is not weird in any of those, but it's not the standard.
Right.
I don't think. I can't remember about contra that much.
Contra would be the closest to this, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, contra is definitely it's based on English country dancing.
Right. Yeah.
Or it grew out of it.
There's nothing I love better than a contra dance.
And in fact, I've always assumed that's where the term contra actually came from.
I think so. Yeah, it's just a abbreviation.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I might be wrong about that, though.
We have digressed a great deal.
Actually, I just realized that square dancing and contra dancing, maybe the contra actually in some way refers to the going down a long line. Because contra dancing and square dancing are very similar, but square dancing you do in a square.
Right.
And contra dancing you do in a line, much like the English country dancing. So I don't know if that's related or not. Anyway, we'll get back to reading so I can actually get through 2 chapters by the time my pizza arrives. Chapter 30. One thing only was wanting to make the prospect of the ball completely satisfactory to Emma. It's being fixed for a day within the granted term of Frank Churchill's stay in Surrey. For, in spite of Mr. Weston's confidence, she could not think it so very impossible that the Churchills might not allow their nephew to remain a day beyond his fortnight. But this was not judged feasible. The preparations must take their time. Nothing could be properly ready till the 3rd week were entered on, and for a few days they must be planning, proceeding, and hoping in uncertainty, at the risk, in her opinion, the great risk, of its being all in vain. Enscombe, however, was gracious in fact, if not in word. His wish of staying longer evidently did not please, but it was not opposed. All was safe and prosperous, and as the removal of one solicitude generally makes way for another, Emma, now being certain of the ball, began to adopt as the next vexation Mr. Knightley's provoking indifference about it, either because he did not dance himself, or because the plan had been formed without his being consulted. He seemed resolved that it should not interest him, determined against its exciting any present curiosity, or affording him any future amusement. To her voluntary communications, Emma could get no more approving reply than, "Very well. If the Westons think it worthwhile to be at all this trouble for a few hours of noisy entertainment, I have nothing to say against it, but that they shall not choose pleasures for me. Oh, yes, I must be there. I could not refuse, and I will keep as much awake as I can, but I would rather be at home looking over William Larkins's week's account. Much rather, I confess. Pleasure in seeing dancing, not I, indeed. I never look at it. I do not know who does. Fine dancing, I believe, like virtue, must be its own reward. Those who are standing by are usually thinking of something very different." Ooh, he and Sir William Lucas would really...
They would.
Really disagree on the subject.
I was just thinking that.
Sir William Lucas likes nothing better than watching young people dance.
Yes.
This Emma felt was aimed at her, and it made her quite angry. It was not in compliment to Jane Fairfax, however, that he was so indifferent or so indignant. He was not guided by her feelings in reprobating the ball, for she enjoyed the thought of it to an extraordinary degree. It made her animated, open-hearted. She voluntarily said, "Oh, Miss Woodhouse, I hope nothing may happen to prevent the ball. What a disappointment it would be. I do look forward to it, I own, with very great pleasure." Excuse me. "I do look forward to it, I own, with very great pleasure." It was not to oblige Jane Fairfax, therefore, that he would have preferred the society of William Larkins. No, she was more and more convinced that Mrs. Weston was quite mistaken in that surmise. This is the surmise that Mr. Knightley is in love with Jane Fairfax. There was a great deal of friendly and of compassionate attachment on his side, but no love. Alas, there was soon no leisure for quarrelling with Mr. Knightley. 2 days of joyful security were immediately followed by the overthrow of everything. A letter arrived from Mr. Churchill to urge his nephew's instant return. Mrs. Churchill was unwell, far too unwell to do without him. She had been in a very suffering state, so said her husband, when writing to her nephew 2 days before, though from her usual unwillingness to give pain, and constant habit of never thinking of herself, she had not mentioned it. But now she was too ill to trifle, and must entreat him to set off for Enscombe without delay.
Jeez.
Why didn't they just object to it in the first place? Because obviously this is just them going, no, we need to assert our control over him.
Because they're manipulative.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's like, why say it yes in the first place? Maybe so they could then go, oh, we were trying to be accommodating, but we just simply must have Frank. Which, why?
Well, I mean, the whole thing about pretending that she's...
But even if she's ill, she doesn't need Frank. He's not a doctor. Yeah. And it's not like they're like, she's going to die, he has to come say goodbye. They're just saying she's too ill to do without him.
Yeah.
I know. They're just ridiculous. The Churchills are awful.
I don't know.
The substance of this letter was forwarded to Emma in a note from Mrs. Weston instantly. As to his going, it was inevitable. He must be gone within a few hours, though without feeling any real alarm for his aunt, to lessen his repugnance. He knew her illnesses. They never occurred but for her own convenience. So, see, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. And yet, he can't say no when she's made this big a deal of it.
Right. I mean, it's classic emotional manipulation.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
at least he recognizes what she's doing. Yeah, at least he recognizes what she's doing, and he's just like, well, I have to go because she's my future. You know, she's going to leave me money, and that's how I'm going to live. You know,
right. Indeed.
So he just has to do it. Mrs. Weston added that he could only allow himself time to hurry to Highbury after breakfast and take leave of a few friends there whom he could suppose had to feel any interest in him, that he might be expected at Hartfield very soon. This wretched note was the finale of Emma's breakfast. When once it had been read, there was no doing anything but lament and exclaim. The loss of the ball, the loss of the young man, and all that the young man might be feeling, it was too wretched. Such a delightful evening as it would have been, everybody so happy, and she and her partner the happiest. I said it would be so, was the only consolation. Her father's feelings were quite distinct. He thought principally of Mrs. Churchill's illness, and wanted to know how she was treated. And as for the ball, it was shocking to have dear Emma disappointed, but they would be all safer at home.
She must send for Perry.
Right. We must send Perry to Mrs. Churchill at once.
Yes.
Emma was ready for her visitor some time before he appeared, but if this reflected at all upon his impatience, his sorrowful look and total want of spirits when he did come might redeem him. He felt the going away almost too much to speak of it. His dejection was most evident. He sat really lost in thought for the first few minutes, and when rousing himself, it was only to say, "Of all horrid things, leave-taking is the worst." Could you get the blinds?
Sure.
"But you will come again," said Emma. "This will not be your only visit to Randalls." "Ah," shaking his head, "the uncertainty of when I may be able to return. I shall try for it with a zeal. It will be the object of all my thoughts and cares. And if my uncle and aunt go to town this spring, but I am afraid they did not stir last spring, I am afraid it is a custom gone forever. Our poor ball must be quite given up. Ah, that ball! Why did we wait for anything? Why not seize the pleasure at once?" "Indeed, I'm very sorry to be right in this instance. I would much rather have been merry than wise." "If I can come again, we are still to have our ball. My father depends on it. Do not forget your engagement." Emma looked graciously. "Such a fortnight as it has been," he continued. "Every day more precious and more delightful than the day before. Every day making me less fit to bear any other place. Happy those who can remain at Highbury." "As you do us such ample justice now," said Emma, laughing, "I will venture to ask whether you did not come a little doubtingly at first? Do we not rather surpass your expectations? I am sure we do. I am sure you did not much expect to like us. You would not have been so long in coming if you had had a pleasant idea of Highbury." He laughed rather consciously, and though denying the sentiment, Emma was convinced that it had been so. "And you must be off this very morning?" "Yes, my father is to join me there. My father is to join me here. We shall walk back together, and I must be off immediately. I am almost afraid that every moment will bring him." "Not 5 minutes to spare even for your friends Miss Fairfax and Miss Bates? How unlucky. Miss Bates's powerful, argumentative mind might have strengthened yours." "Yes, I have called there. Passing the door, I thought it better. It was the right thing to do. I went in for 3 minutes and was detained by Miss Bates's being absent. She was out, and I felt it impossible not to wait till she came in. She is a woman that one day, and one must laugh at, she is a woman that one may and one must laugh at, but that one would not wish to slight. It was better to pay my visit than—" He hesitated, got up, and walked to a window. "In short," said he, "perhaps, Miss Woodhouse, I think you can hardly be quite without suspicion." He looked at her, as if wanting to read her thoughts. She hardly knew what to say. It seemed like the forerunner to something absolutely serious, which she did not wish. Forcing herself to speak, therefore, in the hope of putting it by, she calmly said, "You are quite in the right. It was most natural to pay your visit. Then—" He was silent. She believed he was looking at her, possibly reflecting on what she had said, and trying to understand the manner. She heard him sigh. It was natural for him to feel that he had cause to sigh. He could not believe her to be encouraging him. A few awkward moments passed, and he sat down again, and in a most determined manner said, It was something to feel that all the rest of my time might be given to Hartfield. My regard for Hartfield is most warm." He stopped again, rose again, and seemed quite embarrassed. He was more in love with her than Emma had supposed, and who can say how it might have ended if his father had not made his appearance? Mr. Woodhouse soon followed, and the necessity of exertion made him composed. A very few minutes more, however, completed the present trial. Mr. Weston, always alert when business was to be done, and as incapable of procrastinating any evil that was inevitable as of foreseeing any that was doubtful, said, it was time to go, and the young man, though he might and did sigh, could not but agree, and rise to take leave. I shall hear about you all, said he. That is my chief consolation. I shall hear of everything that is going on among you. I have engaged Mrs. Weston to correspond with me. She has been so kind to promise it. Oh, the blessing of a female correspondent when one is really interested in the absent. She will tell me everything. In her letters, I shall be at dear Highbury again. And a very friendly shake of the hand, a very earnest goodbye closed the speech, and the door had soon shut out Frank Churchill. Short had been the notice, short their meeting. He was gone, and Emma felt so sorry to part, and foresaw so great a loss as to their little society from his absence, as to begin to be afraid of being too sorry, and feeling it too much. It was a sad change. They had been meeting almost every day since his arrival. Certainly his being at Randalls had given great spirit to the last 2 weeks. Indescribable spirit. The idea, the expectation of seeing him, which every morning had brought, the assurance of his attention, his liveliness, his manners. It had been a very happy fortnight, and forlorn must be the sinking from it into the common course of Hartfield days. To complete every other recommendation, he had almost told her he loved her. What strength, or what constancy of affection he might be subject to was another point. But at present she could not doubt his having a decidedly warm admiration, a conscious preference of herself, and this persuasion, joined to all the rest, made her think that she must be a little in love with him, in spite of every previous determination against it. Where did I put my chapstick? It's hiding. See it? It's the purple.
Yeah, no.
Curses!
Curse you.
Curse you, chapstick. You have disappeared.
Oh, it's...
Oh, okay. Good. Carolyn found it.
There you go.
There we go. Y'all. Chapstick is just as important as water when you're going to be talking for a long time.
Yes.
I here decree it.
And you haven't even had any Mrs. Bates.
I know, right?
Miss
Oh,
Bates.
Lord. I was so relieved when she didn't actually say any dialogue when they were at the crowd.
Yeah.
I certainly must, said she. This sensation of listlessness, weariness, stupidity, this disinclination to sit down and employ myself, this feeling of everything being dull and insipid about the house. I must be in love. I should be the oddest creature in the world if I were not, for a few weeks at least. Well, evil to some is always good to others. I shall have many fellow mourners for the ball, if not for Frank Churchill. But Mr. Knightley will be happy. He may spend the evening with his dear William Larkins now, if he likes. Mr. Knightley, however, showed no triumphant happiness. He could not say that he was sorry on his own account. His very cheerful look would have contradicted him if he had. But he said, and very steadily, that he was sorry for the disappointment of the others, and with considerable kindness added, You, Emma, who have so few opportunities for dancing, you are really out of luck, and you are very much out of luck. It was some days before she saw Jane Fairfax to judge of her honest regret in this woeful change, but when they did meet, her composure was odious. She had been particularly unwell, however, suffering from headache to a degree which made her aunt declare that, had the ball taken place, she did not think Jane could have attended it, and it was charity to impute some of her unbecoming indifference to the languor of ill health. And there we go. That is a perfect length of 2 chapters for our reading today.
Yes.
I wish I had scheduled my pizza for 7. I did 7:15 because I thought just in case the stream goes a little longer, I didn't want to interrupt you. Now I shall have to wait 20 whole minutes for my pizza. Anyway, we will be taking the weekend off from Daily Austen. I will be back on Monday at 6 again to read chapter 31 and find out what is to become of Highbury without the society of Mr. Frank Churchill. Also, I am doing another live stream concert tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Pacific. There is a video here on my channel listed under the live videos, upcoming live videos. YouTube recently changed how you get to the listing of upcoming live videos and made it like harder to find, which I am displeased with incredibly. But if you can find where the live videos are listed, there's one listed for tomorrow night. I didn't do a theme this time. It's just a live stream concert. It'll be fun. So at 6 p.m. tomorrow, and then I'm switching after that to every other week, rather than doing them weekly. And I'll be switching between Saturday and Sunday. So I know that's a little less consistent and like easy to remember, but I will always be making the video at least a week in advance. So you'll be able to find it and set a reminder and make a note of when the next one is coming. So tomorrow night for the next one, and then after that, it'll be the Sunday 2 weeks hence. So I hope you can all handle a fortnight without a Sarah Shay requests live stream concert, but I will still be doing Emma every weekday at 6 until we run out of Emma. And then we've been talking amongst ourselves whether I should do another Austen or maybe do a different book, possibly from a different time period or a different genre. We'll see. Actually, it's early. I mean, we're only a little bit past halfway through Emma, so there's still more Emma. But if you want to let me know, if you would like me to branch out and try something new after this, because I'm pretty sure I still am going to want to read more, because I really like doing this daily reading aloud. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a nice thing to do. Maybe I'll like take a week off after the end of Emma or something to give myself a little vacation from it. But if you would like me to keep reading, let me know. If you would like me to read more Austen, let me know. If you'd like another like English novel from the past, but not Austen, let me know. Or if you want me to really branch out and do something completely different, votes are accepted. Opinions and votes. So on that note, I will see you all hopefully tomorrow night for the concert or on Monday night when we return to Emma. Everybody have a good weekend. Stay safe, stay sane, stay inside. When you can't stay inside, wear a freaking mask. Don't be like all the jamokes in my neighborhood, right?